It's been sometimes, you have feast as a salesperson. Other times you have famine, and it takes a strong mentality, and it takes a entrepreneur spirit and really thick skin to get through some of those famine times because of the critiques that a loved one will throw at you. And I think that's the tough one, is when the loved ones who should be supporting you are beating you up. Is there a way to prepare for that famine that can happen during the sales cycle? Welcome to Networking Star. My name is Jeffery Boyle. I am your host, and today we are talking with a very special guest, Nicole Cramer, and she is a sales coach professional. She does podcasting. She's on YouTube. She's kind of all over the place with her training, and she used to be a math teacher. So welcome, Nicole, to Networking Star.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
So how do you go from being a math teacher, geometry teacher, I guess is your favorite, but how do you go from being a high school math teacher to being a sales professional?
Certainly isn't a straight line, is it? It seems like a little bit of a strange jump. I've always been competitive. And so there was a part of me that definitely loved teaching, and my experience in teaching was amazing, but I wanted something to challenge me. And I had a lot of friends that were in sales, and it sounded like a game. It sounded like a competition. And every Friday we'd be at a happy hour and they'd be like, I just sold the biggest, signed the biggest contract I've ever signed, or I'm number one in the quarter this quarter. And it just sounded fun. And I was like, I gave a math quiz, woo, and I thought, I just want something like that to really challenge me. And so I took the jump. I thought, let me just do it. I can always come back to teaching if I want to. And my one goal was to be number one in the nation. And I didn't know what I was doing, didn't know how hard it would be. But like I said, I had a lot of friends that were successful in sales. And I was like, I'll figure it out. Where there's a will, there's a way. So I would say, to answer your question directly, probably more than anything, it was just will and desire and making a decision and deciding that was what I was going to do.
Well, to be very good as a teacher, a lot of times you're kind of set. Your ability to make more money is fixed simply because of just the way that the teaching profession works. Yeah. So how did you, as a competitive person, obviously, and trying to be number one, your income must have been a huge jump from being a teacher to be a successful salesperson?
Well, like an arrow, sometimes you have to pull back before you shoot forward. So it did before it made that jump. And that was one of the things that actually almost held me back from leaving teaching to go into sales, because I knew I'd have to take a considerable pay cut. Until you build your pipeline, until you really get things rolling, you're not really making money necessarily when you first start out in sales. And I knew I didn't know what I was doing. And so it was going to take a little time to get acclimated. So one thing I knew I did have going for me, I was in an interview for a sales job, actually. And the guy said, listen, I can't hire you. You don't have any sales experience. And I said, well, I sold math to high school teenagers for 15 years, and that wasn't an easy sell. He goes, oh, that's good. And I didn't have that planned, Jeffrey. That just came through me. It was like a very divine moment, but it really spoke volumes to me. And it made me realize that's what this is. Those kids didn't want to do math that were sitting in that classroom with me, right? They weren't really showing up because they were excited about math. They needed to get through a class in order to graduate from high school. So I had to sell them on it, right? I didn't know what I was doing at the time. But now I understand that's really what it is. It's building relationships with people and helping them get to a place where they want to be. And I did take a cut at first. And then it was, to your point, I was real competitive, and it was like playing a game that I was winning all the time, and the money was coming in.
Well, it's interesting. My father was a judge. Before that, he was a very successful tort attorney. And torts, you can make a whole bunch of money or no money. And one of the things that my dad told me when he was a judge, he was on the Supreme Court for our state, and then later became a federal judge appointed by the president. And he saw all kinds of attorneys, and he saw the good ones, he saw the bad ones, he saw the mediocre ones. And one of the things that he always said was, the very best attorneys know how to sell. That's the biggest difference. So as a school teacher, it's the same thing. The best teachers are the ones that know how to get their ideas across and make sure that those students are learning what they should be learning. Yeah. So I've been a salesperson since I was a kid. I used to sell anything I could until I started my lawn mowing business, until I started my other businesses. And if you're not a good salesperson as an entrepreneur, then you're going to spend a heck of a lot more money and just trying to hire other people to be able to do it. How do you coach those people? Because it's not just a salesperson, a commission-based person. How do you teach the other people to become a good salesperson so they go, as you said, backwards, but to be able to create a great income going forward?
I think the most important thing that I learned when I first started off in sales is because I was really nervous, and I went in on the first day to this company and feeling like a teacher, right? And the district manager that had hired me called me and he said, "Listen, I know you're really nervous, but I'm going to tell you something that's really going to make an impact in your sales success. People are going to buy from you because they like you."
Yeah.
And it seemed so simple. I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I can get people to like me, And he said, "Listen, you may not have the lowest prices. You may not have, you probably have the same equipment as everybody else, the same products as everybody else, but they're going to buy from you at the end of the day because they like you. You are the differentiator." So I would say more than anything, I think the soft skills are so important in understanding how to be a salesperson, right? Because it has so much to do with how people feel about you. People buy from people they know, like, and trust. And so a big part of the entire process is really building relationships with people. And so hands down, that's the most important piece. If somebody were to say, what made you successful? I could name a lot of things, Jeffrey, but really it was because I prioritized relationships and I showed people that I cared. And so more than anything, that's really where my focus is, and on having better conversations, right? At the end of the day, how you communicate has so much to do with the outcome you're able to create.
Yeah, I'm reading a book right now. It's on negotiation skills. And the main thing the guy talks about is being an active listener.
Yeah.
And he says that being an active listener is one of the most difficult soft skills that you talked about, because almost nobody really listens. Everybody is coming up with answers beforehand, and they're missing all of those sales clues that people are coming. And like I said, I love being a salesperson. It's the best paying job in the world with the most freedom, or the worst paying job with zero freedom and complete frustration on why I'm not making more money. So talk a little bit about just some of those other soft skills, the listening, the ability to create friendships. And even as Jeffrey Gitmer says, all things being equal, people want to do business with they know, like, and trust, like you said. And then he goes, all things not being equal, people still want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. So talk a little bit about some of those soft skills that you were referring to.
Yeah. And like I said, I feel at the end of the day, these are probably the most important of anything, because one of them is, are you a good listener, right? If you're not listening, you're not hearing some very important, I would say, breadcrumbs and huge pieces of context and information that are going to help you move the conversation in a way that you want it to go, versus sitting there thinking what you want to respond with the whole time. Because to your point, that's what people do a lot of times. They're not listening to listen. They're listening to respond. I think curiosity is how we show people that we care.
Mm-hmm.
And until somebody feels like you care about them, they don't care about anything you have to say, right? Everybody's thinking, what's in it for me? Everybody's always thinking, like, why am I here? Why am I giving you my time? And so if you stay curious and you're asking good questions, then you're able to show the other person that you care about them. That's a huge piece of this. Are you able to help them feel important? Are you able to help them feel seen and heard? A lot of times in this busy, noisy world that we live in, nobody's listening to anybody. If you are that person that's actually listening and allowing somebody to feel seen and heard, that's going to make a huge impact on where your relationship with that person goes. And the ability to be empathetic. Are you relatable, right? Are you able to build a relationship where you're able to say, I know you, I understand you, I get you, right? Maybe you've been there before. I've been there before. I've been where you are. You don't necessarily have to have been where they've been in order to understand them, but that is such a huge piece. So your ability to be empathetic, your ability to show somebody that you care, these are really important pieces. When I was at the company that I was at, when I first went into sales, we sold coffee, essentially. I mean, it's more to it than just that, but we sold coffee, and people are always like, oh, you must know so much about coffee. That's how you became number one. No, I actually don't know. I love coffee. I know what drink I like, but I don't know a lot about coffee. I didn't become a coffee expert. I became a people expert. And I knew how to help those people that I was working with feel important. And I knew how to not task myself with having to know all that stuff about coffee. I brought in the experts. I helped that person feel important and showed them that I cared about them and that I was listening to them.
So and I think you're absolutely correct. The ability to connect with the person is beyond important. How do you think that COVID impacted the ability to meet with people in person? Because there's nothing more effective than meeting with the person. The ability to read body language, the ability to create those relationships and just have that harmonious relationship and interactivity with people. But during COVID, so much changed. How do you think that it's reverting back to in-person meetings, and what is the future of the best and most effective salespeople?
Yeah, I think COVID made a lot of things wonky for a while because there were many of us that really, I mean,
Not
wonky
just
was
in sales,
right?
I think it destroyed entire industries and the inability to meet with people, especially when you're covered with something on your
Yeah.
face the whole time. But
Yeah, yeah. The ability to connect was kind of stripped from us. From those of us had been doing it in a certain way for a certain period of time. It was like, whoa, how do I connect now over a screen? And there is something to be said for being in person, and there's a different energy around that, right? And when that got pulled away, it was like, how do I operate like this? Um, so I do think it made a lot of things wonky for a lot of us for a while. I mean, to be honest, when we were able to start doing things and get out and about again, I felt socially awkward. I felt a little bit like, how do we do this? Right. And I think from a sales perspective, because it's all relationship based, that did definitely impact things for a while. But I think people are really craving in person experiences. I think people are craving being with people. I think that we had enough of a, what was it, year and a half to 2 years almost of being cut off from people, that it's actually opened doors a little bit easier now. I feel people are eager to be face to face with people because we weren't able to do it for so long. So now we appreciate it more.
yeah, I agree with that 100%. I During COVID, I was on my house. I had 5.5 acres, and we had a giant basement for my kids. And I went to New York just a little while ago with my wife, and I don't know how the people did it in New York, just being trapped in, and the big cities like that. Just the desire. I got cabin fever and wanted to be with people like crazy. What do you think the benefits though of? I think there's been some benefits too since then of the ability to expand your market without having to travel so much. What have you seen as some of the benefits that happen for salespeople because of this acceptance of online meetings, like what we're doing right here?
Well, and depending on what you sell, you now have access to the global marketplace in maybe a way that you didn't before, right? Maybe you hadn't even tapped into the idea that you could sell something to somebody that you never even had to meet in person. Right. So some of where we maybe had some limitations around, and again, I know that there's territories and all kinds of other things we could talk about with how different, sales roles are structured. But to me, it opened up a whole world that maybe you hadn't considered before, that all of a sudden your market just grew without even really growing, just by proximity of being able to get on a Zoom call with somebody who was in India and who wanted what you were selling. Right. So it opened a lot of things up.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that I'll transition a little bit on this. Yes, you can expand huge new markets, and people have become more accepting of some meetings like this before you get to meet them in person. I think 100% what you said, that the energy is different when you're with people. Let's talk a little bit about sales people, and there's nothing. There's no group of people, I think, on the planet that is more competitive and sometimes more petty in trying to achieve the top. You've had some experiences like that as a new salesperson, as you started to climb in the ranks of other people seeing you succeed and didn't appreciate it. How as you coach people to be a good salesperson, how do you help them start to understand that pettiness that starts to happen as you climb the ranks?
Well, everything in life, we always have the power of choice, right? Individually, we always have free will of choosing how we want to respond to things. And I think no matter what we do in life, to your point with the story that you were referring to, people are going to talk, whether it's good or bad. People are going to talk about things that we do. And at the end of the day, if you have a mission and a passion and a gift to share with others that can better their life, you get to choose. Am I going to listen to the people who are the naysayers, who are going to make me feel like I shouldn't do what I want to do? Or am I going to listen to the people who aren't as loud, but who really need what I have to offer, who are really, searching for what I can share that's going to improve their life? And so we get to choose. And, your focus is what creates the results and what creates your ability to take action on what you want to do. So if you're focusing on the naysayers, if you're focusing on people who are going to have something negative to say about it, you're probably not going to take action in the way that is going to support people and help people that you really set out to do.
And one of the things that you also talked about is that you had to take a step back. How do you train? And maybe you just can't train people. It's been sometimes, you have feast as a salesperson. Other times you have famine, and it takes a strong mentality, and it takes a entrepreneur spirit and really thick skin to get through some of those famine times because of the critiques that a loved one will throw at you. And I think that's the tough one, is when the loved ones who should be supporting you are beating you up. Is there a way to prepare for that famine that can happen during the sales cycle?
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not.
Right? Let's just be honest. So if you're going in and you're looking for some level of like guarantee and certainty and, the ability to post, this is not like, back out now.
Yeah.
So I think to some degree it's what people need to experience. Like, that famine is not necessarily, it doesn't need to be seen through a negative lens.
Yeah.
Is it a pleasurable experience? No. No, the feast is a heck of a lot better. But I do feel like it also toughens you up and it helps you become a little bit more familiarized, I guess, with how to handle yourself through some of the tough times. It's going to happen. And, I always like to say, listen, you get two choices in life. You get to choose your dreams or your not dreams. Either choice is going to have challenges. Either choice is going to have some hard times. Which one do you want to choose? The one that's attached to your dreams or the path that's attached to your not? Knowing the challenges are going to be there. Which one do you want to choose? And so I think at the end of the day, those challenges are really preparing us for what we're entering into, right? It's getting you ready for something that's up ahead. I believe that God always knows what we need to be prepared for. And so a lot of the things that we're experiencing in life, although they may not be pleasant, are actually getting us ready for where we're going.
Yeah. Well, you obviously have the type of personality that it makes sense. Yeah, you'll do great at sales. It just seems to make sense. But do you believe that there is a sales personality, or is it something that you can train a person to do well?
I think it is a refined skill that you can always work on. And I think every single person on the planet is a salesperson. Whether they realize it or not, everybody's in the business of selling something, because sales isn't, and this was my misconception when I first started out. I thought the sale was the transaction. And the transaction is just what kind of confirms it and capitalizes it, right? But the sale is really the transfer of enthusiasm. It's your ability to listen. It's your ability to be relatable to the other person. It's your ability to understand what they're looking for and be able to meet their needs. And whether that's you're trying to influence your group of friends to go out to a new restaurant that just opened up, or you're trying to get your daughter to make her bed, or you're trying to get somebody to buy a product of yours because you're a salesperson. Everybody's in the business of selling something. So I don't think that it is, I told you my story. I went from high school teacher to salesperson, and I didn't actually have training. I went to all the best people in my company and said, can I learn from you? How can I support you? How can I follow you? But it really is something that we can always be refining. We can always be working on, because there are skills that absolutely will help you be even more successful. But at the end of the day, we are all salespeople.
I agree with that too. I guess when you get, I've had some wonderful experiences in corporate America as a salesperson. I had corporate America, I think was the easiest sales job for me because there were so many people that I could take Fridays off. But when you're an entrepreneur, you almost never take any days off. And so you have to remember that as well. But explain to me what you think is the ideal mix of personality traits, and just what does it take to be a top performer? Anybody can be a salesperson. Anybody can. But how do you go from being an anybody to a top salesperson?
I think you really, really get down to two things. You make your priority building relationships with people and helping them solve their problems. And I know that that might sound really simple, but you don't have to have a certain personality type to care about other people and to build relationships with people. As a matter of fact, you're going to build a more authentic, more connected relationship if you are being true to you. And so, because sometimes people will say, oh, the extroverts are the good salespeople and the introverts can't do it, right? And I don't buy into any of that. As a matter of fact, one of the people that trained me at my company, I learned a lot from him. He was a very big introvert and was very successful at selling. So to me, it comes down to, are you a good listener? Do you care about other people? Are you looking out for their interest, right? Again, people do things for their reasons, not yours. And if you're showing up with an agenda to conversations and to meetings, are you actually having empathy? Are you actually caring about what they want? So it really is building relationships with people. And as a matter of fact, Jeffrey, when I told you I had become number one at the company that I worked for. And after doing that a couple of years in a row, I had this big, I don't know, I wasn't connected to it anymore, because what I realized is I had made it all about me and my success and becoming number one. That's not to say I didn't build relationships to get there. I absolutely did. But my ego was so attached to being number one again. And I thought, I don't want to be number one again. So I had one of those dark night of the soul moments where I was like, but what do I actually want? And when I got real and I got down to the basics, what I asked myself is this: well, what got me out of bed before I was good at this job? Before I was number one, before I had this label that I could be like, I'm the number one person in the nation. What got me out of bed? And it was those two things. It was building relationships with people and helping them solve their problems. So if those are your priorities and you understand that people buy from people they know, like, and trust, you will have success in sales.
I agree with that. I say I have been a salesperson for so long that it's hard for me to imagine, as you said, everybody's a salesperson. I mean, even to get a date, you got to be able to sell your good features enough to convince that person to accept it. But sales is truly one of the great professions, and salespeople are some of the highest paid professionals in the world. And unlike some of the other professions, I'm an attorney by trade or by training, and a salesperson at heart. But an attorney almost always has to trade his or her time for money, right? And there's only so much time, whereas a salesperson has the ability to create these long-term residuals that can set you free. And I think that that's what I loved most, and I continue to love most about being a sales guy. So I've got my Juris Doctorate, I have years of experience of this or that, but what it comes down to, I'm a sales guy. I'm a sales guy and I love it. So Nicole, I really appreciate some of this insight, and tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, I would love to connect. I'm on Instagram at the Nicole Cramer. I am also on Facebook at Nicole Cramer, and then LinkedIn as well. So I don't know what your platform is, but pick one of those three, and I would love to hear from you, and send me a message and let's connect.
Well, I'll give you the last word. What does a person need to do? And you've said this enough different times, but sum it up. How do you go from a nothing in sales to being the top person?
Care about people, make them feel important, stay curious and show them that you care about them, become relatable, and help them with the need that they have. There's something that they have not been able to figure out on their own, or they haven't been able to do, or there's something that's going to help them do that you sell, and help them get to that place by filling that need.
Help them get what they want. Couldn't have said it any better. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.